Hey everybody, it's Angela and I am back with a recipe journal that I'm going to make using these envelopes, and these are 6x9 clasp envelopes, and I just had a big box of them from Staples. And I've done a similar technique to this for a junk journal where I sewed it in as signatures, but this one I want to do as a spiral bound, so it's a little different. And I'm just going to make a series of interior pockets interior pages that have 3 pockets each. So I'm taking one of the envelopes and I'm scoring it at 3 inches from the bottom. And then I fold that up, and that's going to give me my bottom pocket on that page. And I'm just going to cut the flaps off all the envelopes since I don't really, want them to close. You could make closed ones. I think on my last one I used magnets and made all the flaps magnetized to close, but this one I'm just going to leave it open. And there, I'm going to glue them together like that, and that gives me a set of 3 pockets. And before I glue them together, I'm going to cover them with some scrap paper. I have some scrap paper that is kitchen and cooking themed, but I also have a lot of these vintage cookbook papers that I've saved from a different altered book that I made. And so I just wanted to use some of those as well. And so I'm just going through and finding one where I like the color that has an image, and it needs to have an image at the top of the page so it actually shows when I cover that envelope. And then the front of the envelopes have kind of a little V that dips down there. So I'm using a piece of an old envelope to trace that V notch, and I'm going to cut that out. On there is just a little detail. You don't have to do that. You could just leave it totally flat or square at the top. But I went ahead and cut that notch into all of mine. And you don't, on this large pocket, have to cover the whole page. Since I have a lot of these vintage recipe book pages, I went ahead and covered the whole thing. But I would do like I'm going to do here, and just cover enough to go down into the pocket, and it doesn't have to go all the way. It'll make more sense here when I cut my page and bring it back on. So I'm just cutting that down. And there you can see I didn't go all the way to the bottom. I just covered the portion that would show. And so you could do that with the back pocket as well. Again, I'm cutting that V-notch in there. So that gets 2 of them covered. Now I just need a piece for that bottom pocket. So I'm going through my kitchen themed scraps, and I couldn't find any that were big enough and oriented the right direction. So I'm kind of looking through to see what I've got. And since I couldn't find any kitchen themed ones, I went through my regular pattern paper scraps and just pulled from that. And you'll see that here in a second. I just start going through, pulling out colors that I liked. And I am going to make 3 interior pages that have these triple pockets on them. And then the front and back cover will just be single envelopes. So there'll be 5 pages total in this little junk journal. So there are my scraps that I'm just kind of going through, and I just pull a bunch of them out, and then I'm going to assembly line this. After I do this first page, I will write down my dimensions, and then I will just go and cut all my pieces and assembly line it through. I may actually go back now that I've got this figured out and make a couple more to save as gifts for the future. And I'm going to give this one away as well. So this is a great way to use up a bunch of your scraps. So I decided to go with that cute little yellow paper with the hearts on it. You can see now that I've figured out kind of what I'm doing. I'm going to write down the dimensions that I need to cover that upper pocket, the large pocket, the middle pocket, and the small pocket. And then I'll just go to my trimmer and I will cut a bunch of them down. And how I'm going to cover them is just with regular Scotch tacky glue. Just going to make sure it fits on there and that I like the colors. And then I'm just going to grab my wet glue and start gluing those. And I'm going to glue this whole piece here. And then when I actually glue the pocket closed, I'll just glue on the sides. I think about removing the metal clasp on there, but it would have ripped the paper, so I decided just to glue my paper right over the top. And if you worked for a place that had, people sending you stuff in this size envelope, I would totally reuse, used envelopes, because you're going to cover the whole thing. And there you can see I'm just going to put glue on the two sides, and that makes my pocket. And then I just take a binder clip to hold that for a little bit while it dries. It dries pretty fast. And this top one, like I said, I'm covering the whole envelope here, but you could just cover the top half that shows. And on this one, I should have just probably glued that whole back, but I go ahead and I make this into a pocket as well. Although, I have the interior of the envelope pocket, so I really don't need two pockets there, but that's what I did. So you could just glue that all the way down and just have one single pocket in the middle, or have two like I did. And then on the back, I'm just going to cover it and make a single pocket at the bottom. And I'll show you that here once I get this finished. So I'm going to go away and cover all of these. And here are my 3 interior pages. So those are the ones with the 3 pockets on it. So you can see all the different colors of paper that I chose. Used up a lot of scraps. And then, like I said, on the back, I just covered it with one piece of paper and then made a little pocket at the bottom. And then for the front and back covers, I just covered them with that paper, and then on the interior of those covers, I made a little pocket at the bottom as well. So that's 5 pages total. And now I want to just add a few different sized and shaped inserts into this for some interest. So I have some yellow like pockets, these ones here, and I only wind up using one of them, but they came out of a 3-ring binder cookbook, an old cookbook that I had gotten at a thrift store or garage sale. So I put one of those in there. I also have some cards that have like a cooking kitchen themed, and the matching labels, the handmade by labels for, like when you make cookies or things that you give away as gifts. I had used some of them, but not all of the labels, so I'm just using up a few more in this book. I have these little kind of food themed tags that I think were made by Little Yellow Bicycle back in the day. I'm just going to bind a couple of those in there as well. And then I have these grocery list pages, and they're too flimsy to bind in, but I just take a chunk of them off that I'm going to include in here as well. And then one of these 7 Gypsies folders that has a kitchen scale on it. I have some of these little post-it notes, an old playing card that's like a tuna fish sandwich. And then these are Project Life cards that are cooking themed. They have cute sayings on one side and then a recipe card on the other so that you can write down your recipes. And then I have a bunch of blank recipe cards that I've used in the past. I use one here and one there, and so I decided to pull out one of each that I have and put those through so that the recipient of this can have a bunch of cards to write down. And then that card that I previously, well, it's not showing now, but I put in a few recipe cards that have already the recipe on them, and they were like this one here. They were from the Goodwill, one of those big plastic boxes that has all the cards in them. I think back in the day you could subscribe and have a few recipes sent to you every month, and so I bought like a big box of them for like $1.99. And so when I make junk journals, I just slip a few in. These are some 7 Gypsies cards that have food and menu themed sayings on them. So that way there'll be, a variety of blank cards that the recipient can write on, and a few that already have recipes on them. This is a paper that I got at Tuesday Morning here recently, and it has 6 recipe cards on it. I think it's 7 Gypsies. It was all the same page in the pack. I think there was like, I don't know, 20 pages for $2.99 or I don't know, something like that. And so I just cut apart one of the sheets and I'm going to include those in there and just kind of sprinkle them throughout the whole journal. And then that's pretty much my insert. So I took it to work and used my spiral binder at work to bind it up. So that's how it comes out when it's bound. And I decided to pull out my stamps, and also so that the recipient has a little gift inside of this, I wanted to take a few pages of my labels. You know, I've got a lot of sheets of label stickers. And I thought, you know what, I'll just take some of my kitchen theme stamps and stamp all the labels on the page and then just put the whole page in the book so that the person who receives this can use it for other things. So my stamps are from all over the place, and you know, some of them I've had for, 6 or 8 years. So I don't know the manufacturers right offhand of some of these, but it's just the idea itself works really well to use your stamps, to just make some sheets of pre-stamped images. And I may actually go back and do a few more just to put in my own cooking stash, so that now that I've got all the stamps out, I might as well just do a bunch of them. So I've got these I'm pulling out, and I think those are like Martha Stewart label stickers, and I got a huge pack of them. I think the one on the right there is like October Afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. But you can see this stamp's so old it's kind of yellowed, but it still stamps just fine. And so I'm going to go through, and that'll just be a sheet that I enclose in the journal so that they can, either put it in the journal or use it for something else and do a scrapbook page with it or whatever they want. And then I have this cute little label sticker sheet that it looks like I used the top middle sticker, but I don't think the recipient's going to care that there's one sticker missing off this sheet. But I really like the sheet. And so I'm taking all the small words like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and any kind of small phrase that will fit on there, and I'm stamping it twice so that she'll have the option of which color sticker to use. And so I'm just going through any stamp set with stuff that'll fit on there. I think there's like one that's like 5 stars and one that says like delicious, and then some of them are, just the different, like dessert or appetizer. So I think that turned out really cute. And like I said, I may go back and make some more for myself, but I like being able to, share some of my stamped images, and I'm going to share some of my die cuts in this as well. I'm going to pull out all my kitchen die cuts and just send a few bags of die cuts along with this so that someone else can enjoy them as well. So I think I'm down to the last couple here. And I also had like some leftover, I had done some coloring of some strawberries, and they were already, it was like a stamp and die set that I had already pre-colored, and I went ahead and included those in here as well. It's just to slip into the book. So I've got those, and I'm just going to put those in one of the pages. And then I thought, well, you know what, while I have my stamps out, I'll decorate a few of the pages in the book as well. So I go ahead and I stamp a label, and I find that while I was doing this, it's best to stamp on the label and put the label into the book, because I try a few where I stamp directly into the book, and since I've already bound it, the surface isn't perfectly flat, so they don't stamp great. I should have done my interior stamping before I bound the book, and then it would have been better. So I give it a couple tries here. I do a few, and then I stop because I think, you know what, I'm going to probably just mess this up, and I've come too far to, mess it up. Although you can always cover it up with a sticker, so you don't want to hold back too much, but that one stamped really well. The ones on the right seem to stamp a little better than the ones on the left. So I go ahead and I do this one, and it doesn't stamp very well at all, but luckily I'm able to reposition it and get it to come out, and then that's when I decide, you know what, I just don't want to mess this up. I'm going to stop the stamping in there. So now I've got that, and I want to add a few more decorations inside as well as the die cuts. And I have this big Diamond Dies mason jar die cut, and so I go ahead and I cut out 5 of those, and I put one in each of the big pockets as a pull-out insert. So that's what's going to be in each big pocket. And then here are some of the dies I use to cut out. Like I cut out all these little recipe soups and everything out of pink. Just some random kitchen shapes that I cut out of scraps. I use my embossing folder to cut out a few of these cards that she can use as recipe cards. There's another one where I just used pattern paper and cut out a bunch of different shapes and then put them in a baggie. Now I'm just going to insert them into the different pockets. So this does wind up getting somewhat chunky. Now these are some of my own personal recipe cards, and I do these with my digital scrapbooking supplies. And that chicken and corn is an illustration that I did myself for Scrap Girls, along with the measuring spoons. I also drew the flowers and the goat and stuff, and these are ones I give out through our Myrtle Creek Farm Facebook page, or for recipe card swaps, or to the kids. And that's why I like to do them digital, because I can share them a little easier. So I thought in order to personalize this gift a little more, I would share some of my own personal recipe cards with some of my own drawings and illustrations on them. So I'm just going to sprinkle those throughout here as well. I think that just, it makes it a little more personal. So I'm going to just find a pocket for each of those to go in. And then I wanted to do a little bit, there's the strawberries, and I go ahead and I include those in there as well. Wanted to do a little bit of extra decorating in here. I have these Project 365 stickers, which I will use here in a second. But first of all, I have this Post-it note, so I just take a chunk of them off the Post-it note pad and stick them in there so that the recipient has some extra Post-it notes. And then I want to put these lime slices, but they were starting to kind of fall apart when I took them off the pad, the notepad. So I go ahead and I just put some staples in the top there. Had a little bit of hard time with that second staple. There, I get that. And then she can write down ingredients or a shopping list or whatever on there and just pull it off and use that note. And then here is some of the stickers from the Project 36 or Create 365, I think it's called, that I got at Tuesday Morning. It just has a lot of food related stickers. So I just do a little bit of decorating in there. Use some foil labels on that little pink pocket, just an extra little touch. And I also have another recipe sticker book. That one there, it's the Carpe Diem. And it had a great recipes sticker in there, which I want to use kind of for the title of this book. So I'm going to, but it was kind of small, so it needed to kind of be grounded by something. So I want to use one of those labels and then put the word recipes on it. It kind of gives it a little bit more presence on the page. And then I found those little bowls. And I'm looking for things that kind of match into that paper because there's not a lot of color going on that paper. So I wanted to stick with kind of the pinks and blues. And then I have a little pop of red there. And I just went ahead and glued it down because they weren't super sticky. And I wanted it, since it was the cover, to really stay stuck on there. And so I wanted to put a couple flowers. I didn't want anything with too much dimension. So I have these from like the Michael's Dollar Bins. And I go through looking for a color that'll work on there. I really wanted to put pink and blue, but I couldn't find a pink that really worked well for me. So I just wind up using 3 tones of blue on there. And then I also put some ribbons along on the binding, and I don't show it when I do my flip through because I wind up doing it at the end, but you'll see some pictures where I put some ribbon on the binding. So there I go. I'm just going to put down these 3 different colors of blue flowers on the front. And that's all I'm going to do to the front of it. I like that it's, simple. So here's my flip through. So I've got 1 pocket on the back of there, a couple recipe cards, a chunk of grocery lists in there that she can use. And then, of course, in each of the large pockets, there's the die-cut mason jar, which I don't pull them out and show them here in the flip through, but each page has got one of those in there. Got the strawberries, and then again a bunch of blank cards, one of my recipe cards. And it worked out really well with this amount of pages in there. And you could use just like the binder rings, like 3 binder rings, or book rings, I think they call them. That would work just as well as spiral binding. Or if you have one of those cinch binding machines, you could use that. So there are some of the little cards I put in that short pocket. And then these are kind of all in that middle pocket. Squeeze the day, I like that one. Some that are recipes that are already on there, and then a bunch of blank cards for the recipient to use. Some more of that vintage cookbook paper on that one where you can kind of see what's written. I've got my stuff using my embossing folder there that you can write recipes on. And then that fish pocket that came out of an old cookbook. And I've got this one. And then the Post-it note lime slices there. And then a bunch of the little die cuts of all the kitchen shapes. That recipe card's got like a metal brad stuck on it, which is a cookie jar. And yeah, so I really love how it turned out. I love all the different colors and, using up so many of my scraps. When I start getting a lot of scraps, I know I need to make things like this because, I really clean out quite a bit while making this, while cutting out all those die cut images. And I loved being able to use my stamps and sharing my kitchen stamps with someone else too. So I can just write some personal information on that handmade by sticker. And then that is my finished journal. And I'll show you here in a second where I put the ribbons on the binding. There you go. I just put some at the top in the pink, red, and teal there. And I just love how it turned out. So thank you guys so much for watching and sticking with this. I know it's kind of a long video. And if you have any questions or anything, just let me know down below. And I will try to answer them. And I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.